Hello everyone, I'm Jerry Kaplan. Ni hao. I hope I said that right. My friends at Cheers Publishing asked me to record a short video to talk a little bit about the history of artificial intelligence. I understand that you are having a meeting and that you're going to be focusing on Marvin Minsky. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the historical figures in the field that I have known during my lifetime. Now, Marvin Minsky was at MIT, as I imagine you are aware, and may seem like something of a mythological figure from the distance between you and Boston. I spent most of my time studying artificial intelligence either at the University of Pennsylvania and also as a researcher at Stanford University, where I knew John McCarthy. Now, John, I could talk a little bit more about him. I knew him personally, and he was quite an interesting character, to say the least. But Marvin and John were both cut out of the same cloth. They were very similar kinds of people, extremely bright, enthusiastic, and very optimistic about the field of artificial intelligence. Now, a little bit about my history. I was a researcher at Stanford for several years and then went off to become a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. I started several companies in the Silicon Valley and then returned to Stanford a few years ago after I retired to teach the philosophy, ethics, and social impact of artificial intelligence there, which I am going to be teaching my course again starting in a few weeks here this spring. Now, I may have a different perspective of John McCarthy and Marvin Minsky than you have, partially because to me they're not mythological figures. These were real people. And as real people, they had strengths and they had weaknesses. And to me, one of the most interesting things about the history of the field of artificial intelligence is that I think that it's widely misunderstood what it's really about. You know, artificial intelligence, to read the press today, the common wisdom is that we're building increasingly intelligent machines, and as those machines become more and more intelligent, they ultimately might surpass human capabilities, and they might steal our jobs and possibly even escape human control and take over the world. Well, frankly, I think this is not a constructive or productive way to think about the field of artificial intelligence. Rather, it seems to me that a better way to think about it is that it's a natural extension or continuation of the long-standing historical process of automating tasks that usually require human labor or human attention. Now, this has gone on since the Industrial Revolution several hundred years ago. And if we think of it as automation, we can talk about the kinds of social effects that it's likely to have. One of the great modern myths about the current wave of artificial intelligence is that it's going to put everybody out of work because these machines are going to be smarter than we are. But if you look back at the history of automation, indeed even just the history of artificial intelligence, what's really happened is that we've found ways to use machines to do tasks that previously required humans to do those tasks. Now, it may be the case that when people play chess or play Go, they use their native intelligence, and it's regarded as a high degree of expertise is needed to engage in those kinds of games. So the assumption has been that when you can program a machine, for example, to play chess, that it's very intelligent. But I have a very different perspective. When you look at the actual techniques that are used in the field, really what's happening is that the machines are capable, we're programming these machines so that they can perform these tasks, but they do it differently than humans do. And I think it's not meaningful to talk about machines as being intelligent in that sense. It used to be the case, at least here in the United States, that a calculator was not a small physical object. Let me see if I can find one quickly. Here's one. this is not what used to be a calculator. A calculator used to be a profession, and it was a highly respected profession that was regarded as requiring considerable skill and attention to detail and expertise, where people would take pencil and paper and would work out sums and calculations. Well, now you can do it for a very inexpensive amount of money with a device just like this. Now, even though it required a great deal of human effort and training and intelligence, we can hardly say that this device is as smart as a human calculator. It's a completely different approach to the same problem. Indeed, if you look at the history of automation, if the things we were building with machines did not exceed human capabilities in most cases, they wouldn't be used, they wouldn't be valuable. They have to be less expensive, more reliable, and usually perform a better job. So many professions that had previously been done by people and which were regarded by people as requiring human intelligence really don't require that intelligence necessarily just because a machine can perform those same tasks. Now, looking forward to the future, we're seeing an expansion of the class of tasks that can be performed by mechanical means, by computers and by robots. And that's mainly due to recent developments in the field of machine learning. But machine learning is not really the end-all and be-all of artificial intelligence. Machine learning is a set of engineering techniques which can be used to analyze very large volumes of data. So it's capable of finding patterns in very large volumes of data that people have some difficulty in finding, or it can be used to imitate certain kinds of capabilities that people can do very simply and easily. For example, recognizing pictures of a cat. But if you compare the way machine learning is used to recognize a picture of the cat, compare it to the way that people do it, it's a very different process. The machine analyzes millions and millions of pictures of cats and extracts very subtle patterns from which it can use that information to recognize pictures of the cat when it's presented with them in the future. But if you're training a young child to recognize pictures of a cat, you simply point to it and go, "That's a cat." And so the child goes, oh, now I know what a cat is. Now, those are obviously very different. So I do not subscribe to the idea that machines are intelligent. I subscribe to the idea that the work of artificial intelligence researchers, such as yourselves, are engaged in an engineering process of taking problems that previously required that human attention and intelligence, and now you're finding new ways to do it using machines and programming those machines and robots accordingly. So I hope that's a little bit helpful to understanding my perspective. And out of that perspective of thinking of artificial intelligence as automation, not as some magical recreation of intelligence, leads us to understand how it's likely to affect job markets, how it's likely to affect economics, and how it's likely to affect the way our society operates. And all of those are very important issues which we have not spent sufficient time, at least here in the US, and certainly not at Stanford University, examining what are the potential consequences of this technology for society. So I hope someday to be able to come and visit China and talk about these issues. And Cheers Publishing has been very kind enough to, they're in the process, I believe, of translating a book that I've written on the subject called Humans Need Not Apply, to talk about these societal effects of the field. But if we're worried about the robots rising up and taking over, I think that's basically just nonsense. And I encourage you not to think of the field that way, but to think of yourself as engaged in an equally noble effort, which is to create additional wealth for society by automating tasks that typically require human intelligence. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope this finds you well and that you have a wonderful meeting.